So that kind of changed a few things about what we had left to work with and where we had to go for direction. So that's kind of a nutshell. But then looking at the very first budget that was put together by this team, and to thank Paul Rotzenberg, who came out of retirement to come in and work, about 10 hours a week, sometimes a little more, with the current staff. And if anybody doesn't know who Paul Rotzenberg is, Paul Rotzenberg was the finance director here for, I believe, 9 years as a director, if not a little more than that. And he was instrumental in, when I was an alder sitting on here, explain to me in layman's terms what a lot of this was, because this is one huge document. I mean, this is a monster. And the last year, things have changed. I startled you? I'm sorry. That's okay. So looking at Paul and Paul's guidance and Paul's, his ability to teach as well as mentor, we thought bringing him on board to help with this process would be of a huge help, and it was. And I just know that moving forward, now the template has been made. I encourage everybody, obviously, to dive in where they're at, but know that the goal was to make it a flat expenditure, flat spending, to also give the employees what we wanted, 3%, not increase taxes, pay the bills and keep us going, and not compromising the level of service that the citizens deserve and expect.
Thank you. All right, with that, I guess we'll look to this corner and kind of add on to that and take it from there.
Yeah, I would just like to say that everything that the mayor said is what we focused on, and we quickly found that we were kind of we were presented with many challenges, so it came down to prioritizing for us what we thought would be a priority for our staff and our city, our residents, and we've done the best that we can with what we have. Ultimately, the goal was what the mayor said, to keep it as flat as possible, to not touch the taxes, and to try to provide for our staff a pay increase that's 3%, and also provide the services that we require, and to bring the planning department up to speed to take care of bringing in the developments that we're looking to have here in the city.
Okay. Anybody have any comments as we kind of kick this off and get going? I know we've got a schedule here that I think Danielle put together. And absent that, or any other comments or suggestions, well, I think get right into it. And it looks like we're starting with inspection services, Danielle. All right. And if you're following along in your manuals here, I think it's page 188.
Yes.
Want to make any comments, or have anybody here from inspection?
Yes.
Or
We've got the director and
Okay.
the replacement director.
okay. You can, if you're comfortable, you can address the group from where you are. If you want to come up and join us at the table on the end, that might be more convenient. Just got an extra chair on the side there.
I'll move the snacks over here.
Come over by the snacks. Oh, you're moving them.
I get over here. Oh, that's fine.
You'll make a notation. go ahead, I guess typically the way we kick this off is if you want to do a quick overview of kind of what your department does, what you're asking for, what's included in the mayor's budget, an overview for the group as a whole, and then we'll follow it up with conversation or questions there.
Well, I'll keep it short. I think most of our items were pretty linear from previous years. No real dramatic changes at all. We had some discussion on vehicle replacements at our meeting with Kelly and the mayor. I'm going to be kicking one of the purchases down the road, so we're nursing along a vehicle that probably should have been replaced. But we had that discussion previous. The only two comments I would make of particular items were the membership dues and the conferences. I guess shame on me when we had our meeting previous, Kelly, I didn't notice that, I'll say small amounts that I had bumped those up were removed. I guess just the two comments on that. The small increases we did have were in regards to a open position that has now been filled. So that was a missing position for about 2 years now that we did fill several months back. And the membership dues and the conferences in schools are kind of hard number items. We have professional dues and continuing education requirements that are state mandated. And my increases were basically to reflect the additional now body. And I guess I would just add, as far as the conferences in schools, one of the reasons I think the department was able to go almost 2 years with an open position was because of the cross certifications of the staff. And I guess I would feel it's a little counterintuitive to not, continue that little bit of additional education we do provide beyond just the state mandated. So we can continue on with keeping our staff up to speed, additional certifications. I think just over the last couple of years, they'll save a significant amount of money. Our staff being able to run short without really impacting services. Other than that, everything is, I think, basically what you see, pretty linear numbers from year to year. I think our revenue projections are probably going up for next year based on single family and a couple of big ticket items coming in on the commercial end. Yet Saputo came in 21 or 22? 21, so that was a big number back in 21. Last year was probably pretty typical, and I think single family is going to go up, and probably commercial slightly going up for 23 numbers when they roll in, and projected into 20. And yet, I'm not sure what I could.
So just for clarification, you're talking specifically accounts 5424 and 5425?
Correct. Conferences in schools really covers continuing ed. We do provide some additional when we can. I'd hate to see that curtailed because, like I say, that's been the reason we've had a very well-rounded cross-certified staff. Our certifications are required. Basically, they're required to do the job. So whatever category certifications, building, plumbing, electric, commercial, residential, those are all required, or you cannot provide those functions. So those are pretty important items over the years as we run short. Hate to see that curtailed if you don't have to. Membership dues. We have professional memberships for plumbing, electrical, and building. They're not big numbers, but the increase was basically just for the additional personnel that put in it.
All right, anything else? Comments? Go ahead.
I do have a couple of questions. It's sort of going along the lines of what you were just discussing with the professional fees and conferences. So with the change in director, my understanding is that once everything goes through, we will then have an opening for chief plumbing inspector, and the purpose is not to necessarily fill that right now, because Justin, you can kind of do a little double dipping, and because of the staff being cross-trained, we might be able to bridge the gap.
The posting's been out,
Okay,
and it expires on the 2nd.
okay.
So
And-
we are actively looking.
Okay, that's good, because I didn't want us to be oversold on that in case, being a director, there are a whole host of things that can pull you away, so I don't want to leave us in the lurch without a plumbing inspector. So then I will assume that the salaries that are in here are for having all of this completely full, that with the plumbing,
Correct.
so, okay, so we don't have to adjust that. Excellent. And then my only other question, was, and this is sort of a logistical thing, and it will probably come up again when we talk about planning, but the planning department, but when we look at efficiencies and staff time and where some departments are a little overloaded and some departments aren't, I noticed in your documents that in 2021, the process for the permitting of signs transferred to the planning department, but inspection still does the quote inspection of the sign when it goes up. And so I would just, this might be a little bit outside the budget process, but I would maybe challenge us as a city to rethink that, because for efficiency's sake, maybe it's best if one department does the permit and the inspection rather than having it in two places at once. And if planning is having to do some prioritization on bigger projects that are coming in, maybe this is something that for a while we might be able to offset back to inspections if your staffing.
The only comment I would make on that, the reason the permitting side of it was slid into planning is because almost all of the requirements that you need to look at before you issue the permit are planning and zoning related.
Mhm.
You know, locations, frontages, size, all that aggregate street area, which determines the size. The inspection side is very practical. We don't need to know your electrical plan before we give you a permit. We just need to inspect it on site.
Is it possible that if they are, would your staff have the capacity, if you're fully staffed, to be able to offset some of that if it was moving down in the prioritization in the planning department? Would they be able to shift some of that back to you temporarily?
Well, in a pinch, we can do a lot of things. It's not the ideal because the inspection staff is not staying up to speed on all the planning technicalities. So it's inefficient. If I had to go and check all the planning items now, it would slow the permit process down. Because I got to go research everything. That's the reason it was slid into planning in the first place. I think Scott worked on that for a while because it's just not efficient. So you have basically inspection personnel applying and reviewing something under a code that's not familiar with.
The more efficient to leave it in
Yes.
planning. Okay, then when we
We're
get
just
to,
calling down to them,
Yep.
sorry,
yep, no worries.
interrupting them.
With the
Can we do
questions.
this, can we do that
Yep.
with questions, waiting on the answer? Just send it down to them, and then we come and
Do
do the
you
inspection.
know offhand when the last time those fees were looked at as far as for the permits for them? Because I'm trying to find a way to perhaps get some additional help to planning, maybe increasing their intern hours, if we could increase some fees in that manner to kind of offset some of this. So I'm just trying to figure out where to put this little thing that seems to be taking a good chunk of their time, where it fits best and where we can be more efficient with
Typically
cost.
the fees are reviewed annually. Now, sign fees are a little different, they're not the norm. There's probably a little more flexibility on the sign fees. There is a possibility to add some sort of a permit review fee, because it is kind of an additional step. I mean, our signs are basically charged out at a fairly minimal fee, I believe. And there is no like formal review fee. So there's a few things that probably could be looked at on the planning side. Our department has very little review time. Even though they're issuing the permits, the director still has to sign off on that permit. But our time is spent in it. But there could be some additional fees looked at.
Great, then I will carry that over to the plan. That's all I have.
Comment here?
Just questions about just looking at the raw numbers as far as building inspections, and it is not very stable. There's, a lot of large fluctuations. Is there a concern with where it's projected to have almost a 1/3 increase over last year's number as far as like bandwidth of being able to provide that? And is there large differences between single family dwellings as far as the time and sort of scope of doing those sorts of inspections versus a large, several thousand square feet facility for like down the business park?
1 and 2 family are fairly straightforward, and the numbers are going to be close. So most houses are going to fall in an average range. So you're really looking at the aggregate of how many houses you have. Commercial can vary wildly. You got a project come in like Saputo, which is 300-some thousand square feet. Besides being, a $80,000 permit or more, that was even more than that. That'd be a 6-figure permit just for building. The time involvement is long, and it's stretched out over, could be a year or more. So yeah, there can be a lot of variances in projects. We looked at basically the developments coming online for 1 and 2 family, and that's where the projected increase in the 1 and 2 family is. And it's been a slower year this year, so both of those should contribute to a real increase for next year. Commercial is a little more difficult, but we have a couple developments coming in besides some big box big box buildings, which can vary wildly on the amount of time involved depending on the occupants that end up in the building, but those permit fees are generally pretty sizable just because they're based on square footage. So I think we're pretty close on the projected numbers. Obviously, that can change. The economy, slow as the interest rates keep going up, but
Construction costs.
yeah. But usually on commercial, it's more the timing. Where are things at in the process? Development takes a long time once they get to our desk, and it flies along pretty quickly. So it's not an exact science on projecting those, but I'm pretty comfortable we're close to the numbers we put out.
I also like to say thank you for, I have had several residents in District 6 where inspection services has been just spot on for taking care of the multitude of needs that the residents have had, that you guys have been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. I couldn't thank my staff. I could not speak highly enough of the staff. I've only been with them 8 short months, leaving earlier than planned, but a very competent professional staff, and they're also very fun to work with.
Yeah.
And saying
I have to say that your department runs very smoothly. If anything, there's compliments that come through about it. And I appreciate your background on budget piece with the memberships and the continuing education. It makes a lot of sense.
All right, any other comments or questions from the group? If not, thank you much for your input, your comments,
thank you.
and we'll move on, and those noted as well. And Danielle, next is health, is it?
Correct.
Page 226. Tab number 6, also in the booklet. Good afternoon, welcome, thanks for being here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Lauren Gottlieb, Health Officer with the Health Department. I'd love to share a little bit about what we do in the Health Department from a very general overview, and then go into a little bit about our budget proposal for this year. But in the Public Health Department, we have a variety of public health staff who focus on different areas such as communicable disease, chronic disease and injury prevention, environmental public health, maternal child health. We really focus on access and linkages to care and services, clinical care, like immunization program. We have a lot of statutory requirements to follow, and we accomplish these through having sanitarians. So those are who you picture as environmental health staff doing outreach at local establishments, doing restaurant inspections. We have public health nurses who do TB skin tests, immunizations, clinical services, public health specialists who focus on community education, community outreach, programming, things such as that, and Drug Free Community Coalition Coordinator who works specifically on one grant and does substance use prevention here locally. We've kept our budget stagnant for operation costs. Danielle and I were talking, I think there might have been like a slight glitch, but we kept it with zero increase because we really wanted to put all of the focus on our request for a shared social work case manager position with the police department and fire. So aware that that is not most likely being funded this year, but health, police, and fire are we're looking to do a 0.33 joint position so that we could equal a 1.0 FTE case manager. Happy to share more about that because I would love for that to be considered in future years. But that position is really critical to the health and safety of individuals here in Franklin. I've prepared a little bit of a packet for you guys so you can keep this for future years if you want to take one and pass it along. But it includes our PowerPoint that we've all chatted about in the past. But the gist of it is the health department currently provides case management for referrals that we get from individuals within the city of Franklin. So oftentimes it'll be a neighbor calling a concern of a family member or someone that they know in Franklin. Police department walks into a scene and has a referral that needs to be made. Fire department has multiple response that they need to go in and help individuals. This is for things such as substance misuse, alcoholism, frequent falls, individuals who are too weak to walk. Oftentimes it's a very sad scene with a lot of PCs or unsavory living conditions. And right now we've assisted in the ways that we can. So we have public health staff take on those referrals, try to coordinate care and services. We have Milwaukee County Department of Aging and Adult Protective Services that can only go so far because they're serving an entire county. So oftentimes fire is having, which they can talk to if they feel the need, but often having multiple responses to the same residents, which is taking a lot of both our time acting as a case manager and then obviously a whole crew of fire or police response to go out there. In the packet, you'll see that we have about 35 on average cases a year, but these cases can be many, many hours. And right now, our 0.45 FTE health department nurse is taking those on, and myself, because we just do not have the internal capacity to do this, but these individuals are living in dire needs. The mayors, I think, keyed this up perfectly by saying that planning had projects near dead and clerks need immediate attention because those are literally what the residents are. We walk into these places and these individuals are having a really horrendous life scenario. So looking for ways to improve quality of life for people who are living here as our neighbors, friends, family. So I would love for that to be considered in future years, if not funded in this budget cycle. I think there's a strength in showing the collaboration between fire, health, and police. Trying to be as creative as possible for a long, sustained position. So that's pretty much all I have on the budget request front, but happy to chat more about our department or any specific questions that arose when you were looking over our budget.
I'd just like to say, when you presented this idea along with fire and police, the mayor and I love the idea. And for me, it's not whether I find value in it or not, because I absolutely do. Unfortunately, it came down to what is priority number one for the mayor and the department, and taking it from there. I think it would be great if we could find money in the budget to support a position like this. So thank you for the information. Did a great job putting it together and presenting it when we had met with all of you.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us and try to be creative as we figure out a path forward.
Yeah, you absolutely are, and I really appreciate that. It stands out that you are trying to find a solution that can work for everybody.
I would like to say that as well. We're always looking for creative ideas, whatever. I mean, the world has changed. One of the things I wanted to talk with, get a feel from folks that are in front of us is the bug and addiction that we about over and over and over. Not a order state dealing with it online, but like we how rapidly that usage. But I think multiple.
Sure. Thank you, Lauren. So it's not a new concept, to have this particular position and for it to be shared between police, fire, and health. It's in a lot of our neighboring communities. So I think, things we can look at potentially for next year is how other municipalities are funding this position, not just year over year, but long term. Because I think, I would love to say, hey, what are we doing with the opioid grant money, or what are we doing with this grant money? But I hate putting people on grants because then once the grant is gone, how do you keep them long term? So I would like to, kind of explore what other municipalities are doing to have a position like this funded long term. The one question that I did have for you is if there was any thought on, I talked about a little bit with inspections, about fee schedules for 2024. Any chance with that? I know a lot of times the sanitarians are out at large events for long periods of time, racking up a lot of overtime. I know the budget line item looks like it's kind of the same year over year for the health department, but is there any thought on any changes in fee structure to try to offset their costs and their time, especially for some of the larger events that, like St. Martin's Fair, Tacos and Tequila, things where they're out for 5, 6, 7 hours on a Sunday, hitting double time, which really straps your budget.
Yeah, there's been a lot of internal department analysis on this, just trying to brainstorm, because now more than ever, and especially when we're in a era of economic development and trying to bring new businesses in, our staff are constantly taxed with new developments and new events that are happening. So picture any event that has food trucks and we're pretty much at it with making sure that they have a license, are operating properly, and the trend of that has greatly skyrocketed. So we're somewhat limited in our capacity in that regard for our fee schedule, but we are looking at coming back to council with a fee schedule change in pools, because pool classifications are changing. So the complexities of how pools are licensed is changing with the state right now. So that will most likely become coming before council, and then tourist rooming houses, so Airbnbs, and the requirement to be licensing those through our DATCAP agent program. But in specific terms of retail food establishments or mobile, we're still in a brainstorming phase for that because of complexities.
And are you looking to take on tourist rooming houses?
We are, because of the requirements of the program.
Staff capacity for that? Okay.
No.
Okay.
Staff capacity for that is nil, but we're trying to do what we can. Luckily, we were able to have a grant that offset or increased our 0.1 sanitarian to a 0.4. So that grant funding looks like it's going to be extended into 2024. So I'll come back to council to request that increase in FTE remain the same, but we have not gotten the official contract of if that agreement will be extended. But they anticipate that will be rolling out within the month. So hopefully we can add that FTE again in 2024, just fully leveraged by our grant that we have for workforce development.
I mean, just one question. I mean, seems like you brought up that idea of having coordination or background, IT background and all. I just want to understand, do you have any system things like that which you can actually do that, or is that like how do you
do you mean in terms of referrals?
Yeah, referrals to like how you can see things and there and how they can, how you want
We don't have a tech savvy way to be doing that right now. What it is right now is the fire department tracks a frequent calls list. So those individuals who they go out to the residents, and I won't take all the details from the fire team so they can fill you in too. But we have, I don't know, 10 plus page sheets of individuals who are called that have 20 visits over the past few years. So no, it's not tech savvy. They track that, and then we can flag with PD specific addresses. So if we have someone who we're very aware of and know that they're in dire conditions, like we probably have 3 out there just this last few weeks, that if they go and respond, health wants or needs immediate alert so that we can then follow up appropriately. But no, it's all just relationship based with our departments, and then we get referrals to our phone. Like I get calls from PD and Fire, or Carol, our public health nurse, does as well.
Just a question
Couple-
over
couple
here.
Go ahead, Ed.
Minor questions. On some of these, they're small amounts, like software maintenance, sundry contractors, office supplies. It looks like the projected mayor's budget refers back to projected activity for this year and the original budget for this year. Your numbers are slightly higher. Is there any, I mean, you can live with the slightly reduced numbers?
Well,
Is there a specific
that's what I was
reason?
referring to. So I kept my budget stagnant for operating budget for 23 to 24 when I entered in BSNA. So I'm working it out with Danielle if there was some kind of tech glitch or what happened. But I'm not asking for any increase in operation budget from 23 to 24.
All right, anybody else? Questions, comments relating to the health department? Seeing none, let's go ahead and move on again. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining us and your comments. Next, it looks like we have fire and fire protection, page 177 in your white Bibles.
And Bibles.
So, we do about, probably be in the neighborhood of 5,500 calls this year. About 80% of that is EMS, and we do bill for EMS transports. That might be one place that we can look at funding for the social worker position. That can be done in a manner, in a flat rate, that there's not a big impact on the personal pocket, out-of-pocket costs. So that might be one means that we can look at for future funding for this position. We'll have to meet with our billing company and see kind of where that number needs to be, but that's definitely something that we're willing to do because this is definitely has value to us as well. What happens is we start to notice a pattern where we get called to the same house several times. It often takes time to identify that pattern because it might be a different shift or a different crew goes. So it's kind of me sitting at my desk noticing the pattern, and then I report it to the health department. There's not a good functional way to do this based off dispatch software or anything like that, but it would be, the position could be better coordinate all of this between our departments. So definitely something to look at, but there's probably some room there to raise our transport fees. We recoup about $1.4 million in transport fees right now. I don't know if there's enough to fund the full FTE, but there's probably room there for that. Overall, our budget is fairly linear as well as other departments. You'll see our personnel costs are going up, but we have added a few FTEs over the years as we try to better staff station number 2, the industrial park, and we're making progress on that. We've actually applied for a federal SAFER grant that would fund 3 full FTEs for a period of 3 years. So we don't know if we've been awarded that at this time, but we'll bring that back to council as soon as we do find out about that.
Hey, Chief, when do you think that you'll find out?
I'm
I'm not going to hold it to you, but do you think it's
soon?
okay?
I guess so. If there's any questions or?
You talked about the transport fees, if I may ask. Is that something that has to go through the county approval process too, or
No.
each community gets to set those?
Yeah, it used to be where the county fire chiefs kind of agreed on a
Yeah.
rate, but that kind of went out the window about 10 years ago. And this would be something that we could set locally.
So we can kind of look what neighboring communities are doing and whatever. I mean, and
Yeah,
obviously-
they're kind of all over the board, and it's been some time since we raised our fees, so we're probably due to revisit that issue.
When I worked in Waterford, just last year, they did not only raise their fees, but I'm assuming all fire departments have the same issue of frequent flyers. And I know that they started giving those residents a fee for that. Other things like lift assist, they had so many calls to the senior living facilities, now they're charging them a small fee. So I don't know if you guys do that, but looking into some
We
of
have
those
not
options.
done that at this point, and our thinking on that is we don't want to deter somebody from calling us. We want to learn that they need our help, and that's one way that this position could help to do that. But we haven't wanted to give somebody an out-of-pocket cost because Medicare doesn't pay if we don't transport them. So if you're just going to help them up and they get a big bill for it, we're worried they're not going to call us and they're going to lay there for days. That's why we haven't gone there, but it's definitely something to look at. And the ones inside, like CBRFs and stuff, that's definitely something that we should look at.
The only other question I had is the SAFER grant. When you said it's 3 FTEs for 3 years, do you have a goal in mind long term for those employees, or would they just terminate after the grant?
The goal would be that over that 3 years, we do find some funding mechanism and be able to keep those additional FTEs. But worst case scenario is they could go back away through attrition.
And that was to echo the chief's, that was my thought too, that we could have 3 years in which to figure out a way in which to fund these 3 positions, whether it's showing growth, new construction, whatever we have to do to show, to justify that increase.
Because 3 years from now, we're going to be far busier than we are now, and we're going to need those people even more. So we're trying to increase our staffing at station number 2. That's still the only fire station in Milwaukee County where there's times it's down to 2 personnel, and it's dangerous for our people. It's not ideal for our response model, so we're trying to always minimally staff that at 4 is our goal. And these 3 additional positions, if we do get the SAFER grant, would pretty much get us there, I believe.
At the transport.
Alderman Hoffler, question.
So for medical supplies, there's a $5,000 difference between the ask and the budget's recommended. What was the reasoning for that increase?
So the cost of drugs and medical supplies is just skyrocketing through the roof. This has been going on before COVID, and it's continuing. That's going to be one of the budget lines that's going to be tough for us, to be honest with you. Hopefully there's places we can make it up in other lines. But in a good year, with everything ideal, this would be in our capability. What's happened in 2023 is we've paid enormous equipment costs. We've had to replace entire engine blocks on some of our apparatus. We've had entire HVAC systems, our sprinkler system at Station 3, all these building and equipment costs. In a good year, if that stays flat and stabilizes, then things will work out.
If we end up going over in a category like that, where would the funds come from then?
Ideally, we'd be underspent in some of our other operating lines. It's a balancing act from any given year to year.
Sorry, one question. For things like you were mentioning, do we have separate capital budget, or is it all part of the fund? Like that?
Yeah, there's a capital budget that they have requests for. Yep.
Alderman Day had a question?
Yeah, there's one other line. I don't know if Alderman Holt forgot to yet. This is sort of going along the same line of discussion that we had with the inspections folks. The conference and school line. When we get to the detailed part of that line item, you mentioned that there's a contractual obligation for tuition reimbursement, and I noticed for 2024 over the last few years, there's a marked increase for that, and so my question / concern was, do we have staff that need to go through training, and that's why that budget line was increased, and if we don't have the money, we'd have to try to whirl it from some other line item?
Per the bargaining agreement, we reimburse up to $1,000 for up to 5 bargaining unit employees for bachelor's degree or master's degree. So up to 5,000 of that is, we can't spend it on anything else. So we don't have, in a year where a lot of people are taking advantage of that, we don't have a lot of money to spend sending people to fire classes or other conferences, conventions, like that. Ideally, when we originally met and you talked about money being available for training and we wanted to take advantage of that, that's why we bumped that number up so high, is to be able to send our people to like out-of-state fire trainings and things like that. But that bargaining agreement is up, so I don't know what's going to happen for next year. So we might not be contractually obligated to those 5 reimbursements, and we may have more money to do other things with.
So you're concerned, but not overly concerned that it's not what you asked for.
Yes.
Okay. And then the last thing, I just wanted to ask you, I know we talked outside before the meeting briefly about some of your capital costs. And just for the sake of the others in the room, I asked Chief about the ambulance chassis replacement and like how dire that situation was for it. And he stated he thought we could get another year out of that, so cross our fingers that can happen. But then the other, for the building improvements for Station 1, can you just go into a little bit more detail of what those are, just so if it's something we need to keep in mind for next year, that we kind of remember what they are? It was the Cat 6 data recabling and the training and video conference.
That was the IT director kind of put that together. We have a very outdated video conferencing system that we do some of our training between stations and with county. It won't kill us to get another year until we can fund that. But with our phones now going to be all EOP or whatever, it's important that we upgrade our cabling at some point.
So not dire, but will probably be needed in the next.
Yes.
Okay. I think everyone stole all my other questions, so that's it for me.
Just one out of curiosity for the turnout coats and related. Are we on a program where you replace those every so many years for
Yes.
chemicals?
For NFPA, they have to a lifespan of 10 years. We also want our people to have a viable backup pair, so they're not in ill-fitting turnout gear. I think that's one line I never questioned, spending top dollar for turnout gear, because if you're going to ask somebody to go in an environment that would kill them immediately, you better make sure they're in the best gear they can get. So we used to do an annual capital request for turnout gear. We've moved it into our operating budget, which gives us a little bit more, a better hand in managing it.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments related to fire and fire-related operations? Alderman Craig.
With the sharing of resources with the county, does that put a higher burden on you to other areas?
We are actually a beneficiary of all the shared service agreements. We are by far an importer of shared resources than us going out to other communities. So that's been very helpful and lets us manage getting busier and busier with the help of our neighbors. But it gets to a point where you can't just depend on them to take your calls. So that's still why we need to add some FTEs. But the shared services has been very good to us.
Very net positive.
Yes.
Thank you.
And is that primarily because of volume of calls?
Yes. Or larger calls. Like we had one, an apartment fire, and we had 6 Milwaukee companies lined up on Rawson Avenue. That never happened before shared services. We would get maybe one company from each department. You wouldn't necessarily get everything that's the closest around the bullseye. So it's both, we get busier and larger incidents, very useful as well.
Now, just for history and regards to new folks, we added a full-time position in '23. That was, I think, geared to be kind of rotational, if I remember, and in design, or how, I guess, how has that worked out?
Well, the few positions that we've added over the last few years have helped us to staff Station 2. We talked about moving a position between shifts just as a means of taking up overtime liability, but the reality of how that would work out, constantly bouncing an employee between shifts, we didn't want to go that route in the end.
Okay. Any other comments for the fire department? Question? Hearing none, thank you very much again for your joining us this afternoon. I think next up we have police on page 160 in your manuals, tab 4.
Afternoon. So, generally speaking, we put in operating and capital requests that basically maintains our current level of service. We did ask for increases in a lot of areas, mainly to anticipate inflationary costs. The mayor's recommended budget did cut back those anticipated inflationary increases, and it's basically a flat funding equal to 23. So I usually say, and I'll say it again, that we will make every effort to work within the budget that's given us, and hopefully the inflationary costs won't be too high, and do our best to work within our existing budgets. We did ask for money enough to replace 4 squad cars and 4 car video systems. We were hoping to get all our cars in the same video system. We've been transitioning for the last several years, so we're going to come up 4 short this year, and we were hoping to again get those. And one less car was a little bit of a strain because we last couple of years we cut back on squad replacements, so that's going to catch up to us eventually, especially with maintaining our existing squads with repairs. The mayor did mention, though, that he's willing to look at some of those issues mid-year, and if the city's in better shape and we still have those needs, that they would reconsider those operating costs and capital items. So I'm comfortable with that.
Alderwoman Day.
Chief, if you could just, I know we've had this conversation before, but in your budget summary, you talk about the amount that Franklin as a whole spends per capita for services, where the average is for the state, and then where we rank in the county. Can you just talk maybe briefly, if you know, where other municipalities might be doing better than us, that do have a little bit more funding coming into them? Is it that they're able to be more fully staffed? Is their equipment updated more frequently? What do you feel like? What is the detriment to being where we are in our per capita spending? What is the biggest detriment for you?
I don't think there's any one thing. I mean, it's just the overall operational spending on services. Some of it is salary. I think comparatively we're on the lower end of the salary scale. That's a big part of it, and I appreciate the mayor and city administrator taking note of that and looking to increase the salaries in next year. I think that'll help a bit. And then I think that's probably the main cost. There is some, I guess, equipment costs that are the difference. But to be honest, I don't know. I never really costed out why there's such great differences, because there are some very big differences in comparable size cities. But we've always been at the low end of that comparison chart for spending per capita for police services. So I think it's a testament for how we do business and how we always try to operate under the budgets that we're given, and just find ways to get it done. But I don't have any real specific comparisons why that's the case.
And then when you had in your budget for your auto maintenance line item, are you anticipating that because we do have some older vehicles that we might go a little bit over that budget line item because we just have aging infrastructure that is going to need more attention?
Exactly it. And we're trying to get rid of our hybrids. It was a good intention, but practically speaking, they're not that practical, and they cost a lot to maintain and keep running. But that's the reason. If you keep older cars, there's going to be higher maintenance.
Because you had asked for 30 and got 20, so about $10,000 difference there. But it could legitimately be more than the 30 you asked for because of the. Yeah,
there's really no real predictable way to know what that's going to cost. You have to factor in maybe, fortunately, squad accidents, and you never know if there's going to be a major failure or just routine maintenance. But it's hard to really get a real good number on that. But again, generally speaking, when you have an older fleet, you can expect higher maintenance.
And then in the line item for software maintenance, for the open records software, do you know about, I know the last year or so has been a little bit more in terms of the amount of open record requests that are coming in, but who typically from your staff handles those when they come in?
Open records requests? Yeah. Mainly it's our captain, one of the captains, Captain Goins, okay, and our dispatch supervisor, okay, Cindy Mankey, and then we also have a clerk that assists. So there's like 3 people that do most of that. We do have other people that are available, but those are the 3 main people.
And then with the software, is that it would make it easier to pull the data in to go through it faster, or easier to disseminate the data back out once it's redacted? What?
Well, both, but mainly it's to extract it, because more and more of the open records requests deal with electronic, video, audio, and social media. There may be requests for that, and it's very difficult, time intensive to go through that. You almost have to have some type of electronic means of extracting that.
Is it something that is specific to police, or is it something that could be more something that a software program that the city could look into getting for open record requests that come into other departments as well, that there might be a way to share the cost of the software?
I can't answer that. It's more of a technical question. Maybe the IT director could answer that.
I know, obviously we have a fair amount here too, so
right.
If there's a way to make that process easier than having a mountain of paper that you have to.
Yes, I know one of the biggest reasons for the software, though, is for our squad videos.
Okay.
And there's a lot of redaction that has to be done, and so I don't, I know the City Hall does have some video, but I don't think it's going to be quite as intensive requests as our squad video requests. We get a lot of that. But that would be a good question to the IT director.
Thank you.
Go ahead. A couple of questions for you. The equipment maintenance, you may have touched on some of that earlier when I was looking through some of this, but obviously original budget for this year was 106.6, and we're up at 127, and the mayor's projected proposed budget goes back to 106. That's 10,000 less than you were looking at. always get nervous when we're cutting back on maintenance. Can you talk a little bit about what that would be for?
Well, just about anything that we need maintenance on. We are very equipment intensive. We have a lot of technology, a lot of equipment, and a lot of maintenance concerns to keep that running. So that could be useful on anything.
But I mean, is it more field and officer related equipment, or is it copiers and fax machine, that?
Not copiers and fax machines, but again, it's all our other equipment. We have, I don't know, some examples.
It's a lot of it's service agreements, like with service provider with Paycom. Our new video surveillance system, that's a $6,000 increase there for this maintenance of that. And obviously, there's a general category at the end that has $30,000. There's a lot of things that come up over time. It's something we can most likely absorb, but it could be close.
I just personally don't like cutting back in maintenance because it seems like you always pay more down the road. So
Well, that's true. And again, we try to stay within our budget, and there is, again, obviously a budget is a projection, and you can't get it exactly right. And over the years, we've had categories that we exceeded our budget, but fortunately, within that category or group of budget items, we were able to save on other areas, and we've never had to come back for more. And hopefully that'll be the case in the future. That we may go over in that area, but another area we may be able to conserve some money and cover that over expenditure. But again, that's just a projection, and we don't know some of that.
Similar concern would be the operating supplies things. That's a big difference there.
Right.
In what the ask is.
Can you talk about the AED units that are out of warranty, where those are located?
Those are in the squad cars.
The squad ones, okay.
Correct.
Question over here.
Can you comment on overtime? You had 470,000 of overtime projected for 23 and budgeted 290, which is last.
Yeah, overtime is very difficult to control, especially when you have high vacancies, and that's been the problem we've had in the department. We've had a lot of vacancies and trouble filling those vacancies, and when we don't have enough personnel, we have to cover shifts on overtime. And that's been really the issue this past couple of years.
What's the issue with the vacancy?
The issue is what every department is facing in the country is a lack of qualified candidates that are interested in getting into law enforcement. It used to be a very high in demand profession. People were lining up. You had to pick of who you wanted. And over the years, especially the last several years, the quantity and quality of applicants has gone down drastically. And it's just hard to find good people. And most departments have gone to giving incentives to rob other departments of their people. And these young officers are taking advantages of that, and they're not staying in any one place for too long. So they come and go. There's no real long-term commitment. And we have almost a constant, predictable vacancy rate.
Given the situation there, would it be appropriate to budget for higher overtime?
Well, I think that would be prudent. Again.
Seems like every year we're on a special allocation to pick that up.
Well, we take as much as you want to give, but I think it's fairly predictable that there's a good chance of us going over our budgeted amount over time. Very hard to control. We do our best to control that, but yeah.
Have we not, just thinking out loud, John, have we not put some of that in contingency in prior years for that?
Taking it out of contingency.
Why, I mean, yeah.
What's going on in operating supplies too?
Well, there's the new increase there was trying to replace the 10 AEDs currently in the squad cars. That's 22,000. And then there's some other items in there that we were looking to get, such as ballistic shields, higher level ballistic shields, level 3, which stops rifle rounds. So that's some of the increase there. For the bulk of the increase there.
And what about office?
Sorry, office supplies?
You requested 61.6, mayor gave you 50, and projected was 55.
$312.
Yeah, that had to do with the squad tablets. But that's the computer that's in the cars. Typically, we have them on a 3-year rotation, just like with squads. Every time the squad gets transitioned over, gets a new tablet. Because after 3 years of use and abuse, it's done, and they are kind of pricey. So that's that cost there.
Other questions, comments? Any, please? Hearing none. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing comments with us. Appreciate that. All right, what do we have next?
Animal control.
I
Like
think
the
these
new
last
over
ones are
there,
just-
or, yeah, they're just with me. Last one.
Okay. Page 230.
33.
It's primarily our contract with.
Matic, yes. So we have a cooperative agreement with Matic and other communities. We provide financial support to them, and they provide service to us, and they have passed on charging us capital expenses the last 2 years. So this current year, and then also for next year, they have passed on charging us additional for that. We contribute to a great amount of their services, and as such, we have probably one of the more larger increases to pay for those services, which isn't necessarily reflected on here, just from a community that, as part of that cooperative that is in.
Is there tracking of any type of volume or?
Yeah, they provided us with these numbers.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? So the shared CapEx is what's coming through and labeled as a debt payment? Am I correct? All right, anything else there, anybody? Questions, comments? Everyone's quiet, let's move on to recreation.
Okay. So recreation, this is a program that supports our senior travel program, our senior citizen group, and our civic celebration mission. We have provided for 8,000 for activities for our senior travel program, 12,000 for our senior citizen activity group. They actually we had an event at Root River. They had an event that they invited us to, celebrating 50 years of service to the community through that group. And our Civic Celebration Commission budget has been impacted by a Common Council approved $30,000 increase. And half of that goes for expenditures of police and DPW expenses. For the labor, basically. Another addition to why that expense, I guess an impact to that expense going up is also moving from a 3-day event to a 4-day event for 2024, just by the way that everything lands.
And one other thing, I believe Mr. Bergner also said that they hadn't asked for any increase in funds in like 20 years or something like that. So they've been operating at the same level of ask from us for quite a while.
Yeah.
For Civic Celebration?
No, for the,
yeah, for Civic Celebration,
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, my recollection is looked outside or fundraiser. All right, any other questions or comments there?
We got one. Has there ever been any sort of thought process to kind of moving the senior programming over to Parks and Rec, making that something where, because that's all part, making that part and parcel of what they do, in that sort of, because that, I think, isn't that done with by the school?
Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Yeah, the recreation. Yeah, the school district. I don't know if there's been any talks. This is the first that I've heard. I mean, I think anything's open for discussion.
Right.
If it makes sense, that, you know, I'm all for anything that makes logistical sense.
At some point, discussion will have to happen, because if the project goes through as planned on 76th and Ross, and it's a city center which has programming, who's doing the programming, the conversation should be had with the school district. Are you going to do that, or does the city need to pick up part of that? Same thing with like a farmer's market, and there's controversy, discussion amongst the civic celebrations. Well, we can do that. Well, I've done it. It's hard. It's a lot of, it can be intense. So I think at some point we have to have a broader discussion.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we do need to look at what makes the most sense operational wise and streamlining processes. And I know that this was on the horizon in terms of the Parks and Rec, and just even issuing park permits, and which department owns that, and why do they own that, and what makes the most sense. Those were other additional. And I'm, like I said, I'm all for looking at things to make it the flow, the workflow of everything go smoother.
All right, anybody else? Comments? Seeing none? Let's move on to planning, page 239, I believe.
So, planning. Please take it easy on me as I'm subbing here. There are a lot of needs that we have identified in planning. There's a lot of requirements that we aren't necessarily meeting as a department that we're going to have to try to answer, really, and find money in the budget, and also find the ability within our staff to answer some of these components. Some of them are the comprehensive master plan, the comprehensive outdoor plan, the zoning maps, and rewrite, the UDO rewrite, which has been allocated for with this year's budget, 2023. However, we are about a year behind in that. So it could spill into 2024 depending on how long the rest of this process takes, because we are at all of the articles have been taken care of and reviewed. Now we're at definitions, and then we also still have to do the zoning map, which is to go hand in hand with the UDO. And then we cannot implement it. So it can be council approved, but we can't implement it until we have the zoning maps and the comprehensive master plan.
It's a horrible catch. I mean, you're really getting nothing done in your circular in your approach to get finality in one, but you can't start attacking the problems and the issues of the other one until the third one's done. And you get caught up in, especially with the floodplain and the whole DNR.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some ridiculous pressures and accountabilities that are being bestowed upon us that are going to cost a lot of money. And then we can't fix a lot of the issues that we're having that are holding up everything downstairs until we can make adjustments to this UDO. So we're making text amendments to like almost every project coming forward. That because we're more restrictive than other communities to boil it down. But what Kelly's talking about is there's a lot of hooks that are hooked with UDO, comp plan, and we're trying to get these forward. It's not cheap.
Yeah, and I can speak to the UDO rewrite and some of the focus on that, like the mayor said, we've made it more restrictive for our community than we are obligated by the county, the state, and federal. And so we're kind of trying to look at fixing that, taking a step back and making sense for our community without making it as restrictive as it's been. Another component of that is that my understanding, based upon everybody in planning, is that our current UDO is broken. So it was written in the 90s. I'm not exactly sure of the year. A time before computers became a norm, and everything was kind of electronically sent. And as part of our UDO, we have administrative process in there, which binds us to putting upon applicants, I think it's 12 or 13 copies of every single thing that they put into the department that they submit. And then any change, any little change, it's back to the drawing board with those copies. So, I have not had the opportunity to speak directly with the UDO rewrite group that has taken this project on, but I would like to take that administrative component out and reference a separate document so that way we don't have to worry about these rewrites and being confined by things that are appropriate for now but might not be appropriate in 10 years. Because this is a very intense project, and again, it requires different pieces to be updated and implemented all together.
And this is being done all internally?
No, we have
farmed out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have.
I'm
working.
Project.
Yeah, I'm working on getting some proposals for comprehensive master plan update. It makes sense to request of the group, the consulting group that's doing the UDO rewrite, to do that zoning maps. But obviously, we're going to have to look to get proposals or bids in and move forward with that. One of the things that the mayor had referenced was, as a result of a complaint, I believe, it had gone all the way to Wisconsin DNR, and there were complaints about properties that were in floodplain areas, and as a result, the DNR has identified a spreadsheet of properties that we need to make sure that we bring up to code for the floodplains that they are in. Many of them, I think the majority is with the county. So we are working we just had a quarterly check-in with the group over at the DNR, who is they're working with us to facilitate some sort of movement forward to correct this. But there's components of it that will absolutely have to be incorporated into somebody's position within planning. And Obviously, that's very difficult to do right now because we have one planner, one is out on maternity, and that's pretty much where we're at right now. We have a open position for associate planner, and today the mayor and I had spoken with a previous employer, employee rather, and somebody that we have done consulting with multiple times through the years. In fact, we had just gotten approval from Common Council at our last Common Council session to enter into an agreement for additional consulting work with him. He has been graciously looking for ways to help the city. So we have, I think his billing rate was $140 something as a consultant. And we had talked to him today about, he had actually expressed this to us, and we had talked with HR about this, if this was something we can do. He is willing to work 19 hours a week, capped at 19, for the rate, the top maximum rate of a planner position of $46 an hour, which is a substantial decrease. So if we can get that approved, we would obviously like to do that. And then that would be, he would be capped at 19 if the work's not there, which we've not reached that place yet. But if the work wasn't there, then obviously we wouldn't ask him to work on something. But right now, we just have way too much work and not enough staff.
Somebody that might be retired at that age again?
No, and it'll come out a little more, but the thing is, the gentleman that worked here, he's a planner elsewhere, and he'd be a part-time gig, and he still, right now, works doing part-time work here, intimate knowledge of everything, and we are in a position where now it's downstairs is just getting flooded. And one of the things that I'm doing is, every time I'm going to anything for any new project, I bring and offer up the alder of that district to come along. So they have a sense of appreciation of everything, because I didn't have that offered to me in District 6. Now we're making sure that's part of the norm, and that way you understand about the magnitude of everything going on. And then now when it goes downstairs, we're awesome. We're all excited, come, and then it's killed. So we want to make sure that people are going along with our ordinances, but with a path of success. And that takes time. It takes a lot of digging into these intricacies to make sure we are doing everything lawfully and legally forward. It takes time. Right now we're working with one planner.
Right, and she's got some priorities. You know, we've got the Karma project coming through, and we committed to a very tight timeline with them. So that's obviously her main focus right now. But as that's occurring, we have our other planner that's out on leave, and all of his work is just kind of stopped. So we're trying to pick up and keep those things moving, and keep them moving along, so we don't have applicants that are furious with the city for holding up their projects that they had big hopes for completion in a timely manner.
This is the group that's got the headcount increase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one planner.
Are we confident that attract a candidate, or?
Well, just like the chief said, it's a very competitive field. Very competitive, and we're trying to be as competitive as we can. You know, looking at having that intern, you know, we thought she was going to be a great viable option, and bring her on board. She's doing an exceptional job downstairs, and you know, found elsewhere is more aggressive and higher pay. And I guess, how do you compete with that? And it's a problem that we're going to have in every area here, as in other businesses are having the same problem. So we're trying to attract them with a great community, everything else that we know is true. But will that influence them enough to come? We'll see. We're not getting a lot of interest right now. As soon as the council approved that position, the next day, what's that?
We have two.
Oh, we have two. I'm saying I was going to get into that.
Sorry.
But what I'm saying is that once the council approved that, we jumped right away, post the position, get it out there, get somebody, and we have two. So,
but I mean, you know, those are applicants. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're the right fit for
right.
the city.
It's just two people applied. Could people click? Maybe click. I mean,
I think there's one that's viable, and I think
One's out of
Tina had
state
said
for
that
sure.
one is not. Yeah, one's in Iowa looking to get back to Wisconsin. But you know, it comes down to this is a really tough workforce right now. It's extremely difficult to be competitive, especially with our budget. And right now, that's kind of the name of the game: is what are you going to do for me, and what are you going to pay me?
Well, I've held off this year. Wanted to push for a person to work on compliance, and I want to put it forth in 2025 to do that, because until we address some of these issues, and on Iraq, but that's a prime example, when we get PDDs and there's not a clear line of who's enforcing to make sure that provisions are taken care of, and we're paying outside contractors to inspect silt fence and all of these other things. So look at the program like Berlin has and institute that here. So I recognize we're not in a position today to do that, but I think it would be a mistake if we don't look at that in time.
So
I agree with you 100%, Alderman, 100%.
the mayor and I were tossing around some ideas about maybe more of a planner lead, a planning lead, and a code enforcer. And
Well, I don't like to call it an enforcer, but
well, right, you know, zoning and code.
Enforcer.
Yeah, right.
no, we had one.
But
of
you know what
those.
I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
You're right,
Yeah,
he was armed,
somebody,
right?
somebody to take care
Officer
of.
Deck we had, and he was run out of town on a rail. It was we had a guy, and it was basically going to be, well, you find all the
Yeah, we don't wanna
things
do
for
that.
tickets, and that'll pay your salary, and that was not what I'm
Right.
looking to do.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. I mean,
No.
that's unnecessary for our community, but more of, so, you know, I see this
Great.
position as kind of, for example, with the DNR and the FEMA, the threat of FEMA, coming in and being the one to take the lead on getting those letters out, contacting those property owners to try to remediate the issue of why they're out of compliance with the floodplain and what the reason is for the DNR. I mean, that would be a huge help. Like you said, the noise piece of it. There are aspects that obviously there's things that come through that this person could do and would be a great benefit to the city. I was thinking if we could pull it off at a part-time level and then have the lead take more of the big department encompassing projects, you know, taking care of some of these projects that have to be done, making sure we're meeting state mandated laws.
Or
And
even smaller than that, we shouldn't have to sucking up time from our city engineer.
right.
He's got more important things to do and deal with somebody who doesn't feel they need to have a fill permit.
Right, exactly. And to your point, we should be having somebody at a lower pay grade taking care of those headaches, if you will.
Have we always operated without a development director?
As far as I recall, I don't remember. I mean, there's the economic development, or if you're talking about just, I think that name was semantically changed to planning manager.
No, we had a director of economic development for years, Stan Kotka, and then
Well, I said economic development, yes, but I don't know when you're saying development. If you're saying
It's
this
in here.
project
It says
development,
city development.
City development.
see that's set up different. That's what New Berlin is set up as.
Yeah.
But they also do the economic part of it rolled into that, but their whole department is laid out different.
Yeah, well, sometimes when you don't have a leader, that are supposed to want,
Agreed.
happen.
We're looking for the right leader, an effective leader that's got the best interest of the city, you know, in mind.
Right.
Not.
I think another piece of all of this that could really help is, again, going back to what you had talked about with the recreation and parks of the senior projects or programs rather, is to start looking for software programs that can really help us, and also processes that can clean up the redundancy and make things smoother flowing. So right now we have a system that was purchased to address our financial needs with BSNA, and because there was, a commitment made to it, we're kind of trying to, from what it appears to me, is trying to fit a square peg in a round hole for all the other departments, because we've got these workflow modules, but we don't have a business analysis of the process and making sure that we have the right workflows and programmed in this system. So it's not even working for us. We have this purchased, but we don't have anybody that put together those workflows and was able to identify where things are, where there's congestion, if you will, and where we can improve upon processes.
John, wasn't GIS supposed to have a lot of that add-on capabilities, if I recall, or kind of talked about that kind of came on board, or am I something?
You might be thinking something else, but you're not far off, because there was talk about the expanded capabilities of a number of these programs, that are supposed to be there. And I think they're going to get there, but they may not be there now. But I mean, what do you do? I mean, people are pounding on our door again. You got things done.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point, there's a lot of, I think, software where we've got the ability or the option to purchase more to get more done. For example, ADP, the payroll piece, it's very labor intensive, and there's HRIS out there where we could be streamlining a lot of it and making it less labor intensive, and having a program working for us that is really checking the boxes instead of putting a substantial amount of money aside for just the payroll function in and of itself. I mean, we're still using Excel spreadsheets for timesheets.
Well, go ahead.
I mean, I just wanted to know, like, IT as such, I mean, it's part of admin, or where does
Yeah, it falls within the departments at this point. So I think that and I can't speak to previous years except for what I see in the previous write-ups, and that is that there was this idea that they would be, for planning, for example, incorporating Zoning Hub in, which is a software. It's a couple grand, like low. I think it's like $1 to $3 grand or something like that a year. But it really makes a lot of these processes easier. And as an applicant, instead of calling in and asking, where's my application in this process? Who can I speak to? Can I get a phone call back? And et cetera. They can go out and click on their project and see exactly where it is in the process. So it really clears up some of the congestion from the unknowns and the inability due to staffing to actually have those conversations with applicants.
actually, if it in having an IT, and my last position was CIO.
Right.
I mean, looking at IT from the top and seeing the functionality, how you can integrate different functions is something, because I mean, end of the day, it does reduce a lot of your overheads in a way that you don't replicate things.
Right.
Also, with the new models that software as a service model, you don't have to own that software or buy and maintain. These are like services provided on a subscription model.
Right. Licenses.
I mean, again, it all depends.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and to that point, it was our IT director who brought the idea of an HRIS system to me, and we had kind of been kicking around and looking at some of these systems that are out there, just to see what's available and what could fit for us and how much it costs. Because if this is a smart answer and it's less time, it makes more sense to go that route. And this is one of the things, one of the major reasons why the mayor and I pressed the mayor for a focus on our infrastructure, our technology infrastructure here. It needs an overhaul. It really needs to be brought up, because if something happens here to our technology, we don't really have the ability to service our residents in our city like we need to.
And who does the IT director report?
James Metelsky.
Who does he?
Me.
Oh, so he's part of.
And he's fantastic. I mean, he's got a master's in business analysis, and will come with a scope of work, a statement of work. He'll come with all of the box checked for projects. He's really thorough, but also spread thin.
Yeah, and I think over the years, and John, you know this well, that we've invested in technology that I think has been fitting our needs, and Anson County, perfect example. I think the importance of that, at least from what I'm hearing, in terms of manpower savings, more efficiency. You said clearing
efficiencies was a big deal.
Yeah, because if we can do that without added FTEs and benefits, and now, and as we know, can you even find those people?
Right.
Talent that you're looking for.
Right, and that really is some of the conversations that Jim and I have, because it's just about doing things smarter and trying to meet the service levels and expectations of our residents with what we have. So, you know, we're trying to find smart ways to do that. And I know as a business analyst, it drives him crazy to see the redundancies. He's the one that's actually brought it to me, like, why is this department doing this? And then also this department's doing that. And, you know, if we could get somebody in here to walk through and sit with somebody every day, a different person, and see what the workflow is, so that way we can have somebody take it, analyze it, and present us with better options of working more succinctly. And yeah, exactly. So that was one of my takeaways from, I went to the League of Wisconsin Municipalities Chief Executive, I'm trying to think, conference. We had joined that recently, and one of the takeaways that I have is a university alliance group where I've talked with him about some of the things that I think would be easy but effective hits, major impacts, such as our website. You know, bringing that, updating that, making it more user friendly. The business analysis, and providing us with workflows that make the city hall run smoother. And, you know, obviously the end product for all of that is that the end user, our residents, our developers are happier.
And some of this, I have to believe, we're not the first ones looking at new mousetrap. Other cities, similar functions, processing similar requests, trying to serve citizens a similar way. So,
yeah, and I mean, and you know, as part of looking into that, I've looked at some of the different city websites, and they're easier to get along, to move around in and find what you're looking for. I mean, that's just, you know, some of those pieces, but this all goes into the greater goal of trying to cut fat where we can and just work smarter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Much different process than trying to get snow off the road, where you have to have equipment and manpower to do it until the autonomous, I guess, drivers show up. But I don't think they're ready for hire yet, from what I'm told. But yeah, I think working smarter is key, especially with technology changing
daily.
You know,
Right.
so to try and reach out there or see what other people are doing, best practices, get their ideas, find out what the pitfalls are, et cetera, et cetera. All
Yeah.
It's the revolving cycle, because right, if it's easier for us and it's easier for people who want to do business with us, it's easier to retain and recruit staff to work here. So it's a
Right.
whole big picture cycle that once you start going, it's just getting down the right path.
Right, and your end user is happy, and those are the people that are engaging in people at City Hall, staff at City Hall, and if they are happier, that's a better experience for the staff as well. But also when things are running smoother for staff, they also are happier, and so it's a reciprocal situation where we can really impact how we are delivering our services.
Is the Technology Commission operating and they provide you some assistance?
Well, they did. With not, I'm talking not with this, but they're up and running, yes, and they have given Jim as quarterback that, and that's how we got all our cameras and things going. I mean, he did all the research, the quotes, everything. I mean, we've got the best things now. We finally have a system in here that's monitoring, and that's just one of the many things. And yeah, so the Technology Commission is now like doing a lot more than they were ever required to do. So we're very happy that they're doing that.
Well, I think that they struggled to have a quorum until recently. But the other thing, and I would really like to just put this out there, Jim is meticulous on providing enough bids and really looking for the best value in what services are being offered. So he's pouring himself into the end product that he's bringing in, whether he's actually putting it together or not. He's really involved in every project, and I really appreciate his expertise. Because I think, what he's doing will lead to better things here at City Hall.
Good. Sounds like there's opportunity.
There are lots of opportunities. Speaking of, so back to planning, sorry that we got off on a tangent. One of the pieces that we had done was we moved up the planning commission meeting from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. And so one of the things that many don't know is that our lone planner downstairs is hourly. It's just even that sitting around for 2 hours, if she's working, we're paying overtime for those hours. There are 2, 4, 6, 8 boards and commissions that they have to staff. So, some of this goes back to, for example, environmental. They've not been able to get a quorum, so that has not, is that correct? I believe you're on that, right? Or no? Oh, you, okay.
We have just enough to have a quorum, so
Okay.
if any one person is available, we have none.
Right. Okay. But this is also very taxing for a very understaffed and overworked department to have these meetings to staff.
Is there any wiggle room to try to get the intern up to 1.0? And I'm not currently this, but wiggling around with fees and whatnot, because I'm assuming as an intern, it's not, they're not, gonna make their millions as an intern. But just in terms of attracting someone, I think if you can put a full time behind it rather than a 0.8. And I know we talked about in here as well as in other instances about looking at different fees and fee structures and whatnot. Because I was thinking, all of the little nitpicky, low hanging fruit things that just muck up our planners' schedules. I'm thinking of the things that our intern was doing right now. They had a few more hours, they could really get through some of those just low-hanging,
right, like
day-to-day
the
mundane
sign permits, the variances,
Yeah.
the stuff that can be kind of at least reviewed at that level.
Yeah. It's not a ton of help, but it could be some help.
I just wonder what, from an internship place, I imagine that that would be somebody that's in school, and so they might not have the daytime hours to dedicate to something like that, or the flexibility or the desire. I mean, I know that Anna went up in hours this summer, but I don't think she maxed out. I'm not exactly positive, but I don't think she maxed out. And part of that's because, you know, the work that she's doing in school that allows her to be an intern is pretty intensive.
I can ask the mayor, you're on the council. Regulo came and had increases to all of our fees. Some of them were quite high. And I remember we asked, well, how does this compare to other communities, which he hadn't done. I don't recall ever coming back.
I think it did, yeah.
You're right. I don't think that did come back, but we, at the time, you're right. When I was District 6 Alderman, we did. I think you and I both asked, where does this lie with other communities? Because we didn't want to be overly aggressive, but yet were we missing out on what we should be getting? And I believe you and I agreed that we want to be at least getting what we should be our fair share, and that was the direction that he was given. And I don't believe that's come back. But
now they're shorthanded, but it may be something that we still need to take a look at.
We do, and we will.
Absolutely.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, it goes back to the process too. If we had something that was cleaner and less burdensome to our applicants, maybe we would have more developers knocking at the door. You know, unfortunately, the relationship is interwoven, right? Like, it's difficult to create, to improve upon the process with limited staff and multiple projects coming in. But I think it's something that really needs to occur, because I've heard from developers and people, residents alike, that it's very difficult to do any kind of development business in Franklin when it comes to the planning department. And there are developers, in particular residential developers, that will tell their clients, I'm going to charge you 5% more if you want to build in Franklin, because it's that difficult. And I mean, you know, Dr. Montgomery, when he came in for his pole barn special use permit, he had a builder or contractor that refused to even go through the process. He said, I'll build it for you, but you need to deal with this. And that particular individual went through, I think it was like 8 months, and he had a variance, and he was sent back through the entire process to start over. And I was just like, time out. We need to see what we can do. If we can't make it work, then we need to schedule him for Common Council session and have a re-review of the special use permit with these changes, because we can't be putting these people's lives on hold, so to speak, for that kind of ridiculous time frame.
You know, part of it is that ridiculous UDO.
Yes.
Just a little bit of history, which you would know, John, that when that stuff went through, it was not done in a vacuum either. There were meetings, there were photo vignettes, there were all of these things. In the city at the time, the community said, this is what we want. We want high standards, we want restrictions, we want all of these different things. Not saying it was the right answer, but I mean, it wasn't government going, we need to do this.
Yeah.
And then we hired people that took it to the nth degree.
Yeah, and I get that. And I know that there was a very cooperative experience with the comprehensive master plan as well. And unfortunately, these just need to be updated. And for whatever reason, they are how they are. But now we are operating on things that are pretty archaic. And it's causing a lot of issues for
but when
the
you
city.
have a code, and this is what it says in the code, and an applicant comes in and you're told you can't because this is what our code says. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Got to get that fixed, which I understand that
Yeah.
you're working on. But in the meantime, those are the rules that we have to live by.
Yeah.
I have some questions.
Well, unless there's text amendment options or special use, whatever can go to plan commission and council, obviously, those will be pushed to plan commission and council for the approval of the elected.
And that's what we did with these projects when we were getting stymied. That were like, wow, you've been here since 1970 and now we're having all these problems. It was to find that pathway to success. Fine, here's our UDO. Here's what you're not in compliance with. Here's your pathway to get it done to success. Bring it back to plan, bring it back to council, make a decision, move on. Instead of just killing it. And that's why we reacted the way we reacted.
Danielle?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So going back to the planning budget, talking about the capital, so we budgeted $150,000 in 21 for the rewrite of the UDO, and we've spent about $115,000 of that so far. So I mean, is that over the last couple of years? So do we see a significant change in our? I mean, what? I guess I don't know what they're doing for $120,000 if it's still not done.
Well, I think that they're dependent on our schedule. What's that?
Yeah, the last few times we've tried to meet, we hadn't been able to work it into the schedule, so it's been bumped several months.
So
but
what are they doing though? I guess what is that company that we're paying for every month? What are they doing for UDO right now?
Well, they're looking for ways to make it more efficient and in line with what the requirements are from a county, state, and federal standpoint, and then making sure that they are answering what the city wants and expects.
So are we expecting that we're going to need to add more money to that budget at some point if we've already spent 20 of the 150?
They finished natural protection or natural resources, which was the last article. What's that?
There's like two areas left maybe?
It's actually just definitions is left.
Okay.
So that's just that is a project that Regulo is running with. So with him on parental leave or paternity leave, it just kind of changes things a little bit. But
we're just not expecting. We don't need a budget more money.
Not for the UDO rewrite. I don't think we do. But there are components of that, like I said, they're kind of married, and it's like a package as a requirement. So it's not just the UDO rewrite, but it's the comprehensive master plan, and it's the zoning maps. The zoning maps, especially.
Okay, so we budgeted in 21 $30,000 for the corp. That was never touched. We budgeted $40,000 in 22 for the corp, and that wasn't done. And then we budgeted $80,000 for the corp and the comprehensive plan in 23. Are we anywhere with those? Or I noticed that we have the comprehensive master plan and corp combined in 25, but we didn't budget anything in 4. I'm not really sure where we're at with that. And
well, I think we're going to have to try to do what we can in this year and also into next year, do whatever we can to make sure that we are where we need to be, because to Ed's point, it's really preventing us from operating efficiently and effectively.
So is the plan to use what we can of the 80,000 in 23 and then just roll it over into 24 and not budget anything in 24?
That's probably what's been happening. It's been
right, probably.
Forward.
Yeah.
This is completely out of my area, but I'm just thinking of this out loud. Are these that unique city to city to city, or is this something that they can pick off the shelf and say, this would cover 80-90%, now let's fill in the gaps and away you go?
To your point, I had a good conversation with our planner recently, and she was giving me names of places that we could look to help us with the comprehensive master plan. And Sewer Pack was one of those companies that she had recommended, but she had said with a caveat, they put out a template and then you go in and you adjust it accordingly to your city. So there's a template, yes, that we can absolutely work with them on, and they'll probably be the most cost effective.
Probably the longest too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Because you know how it is. It's if you're the most cost effective, you've probably got a long list of people ready to use services compared to those that are more expensive. I mean, these are just I can't speak to what has been done in the past, just like you can't, but I can say that these are aspects of planning that we need to get into shape as quick as possible, because this impacts the staff's daily lives, you know, their working lives. It impacts our applicants' process, and it's painful. It's really painful, and I know, you know, Dr. Montgomery is an example. He said that the work product, that, you know, like we should have a quality assurance board or commission just to make sure that we are operating as efficiently and effectively as possible, and making sure that the work product that we're putting out there is up to standard.
As an example, the UDO, part of the impact will be how we calculate density of the project. Totally different than what we do now. So a project that's coming in may fit under the new proposed, but won't fit under the old. But we could be
We're in the
2
current.
years away from having this changed, and that project won't fit.
Right, and then we lose that opportunity if it doesn't fit, and you know, and that is a lot of what I think we're kind of seeing lately, especially at Plan Commission. I mean, we've seen recently the amount of requirements for landscaping was absurd compared to the space, and it was just one of those things where it was, this is going to have to either be like a special exception that council will have to consider, or the project just will not be able to work.
So there's special exceptions coming in.
Unfortunately.
Oh yeah, there's
What we're gonna lose.
workarounds and one-offs. Yeah,
And then you're
absolutely.
creating all these new precedents.
Yeah.
Or we lose them, or they leave.
Right.
Because other communities couldn't wait to get Karma, who's been there since 1970. I mean, there's all these other places that we lose. And it's like, well, we're going to be on our UDO. Well, now we're going to lose. And we're not going to, my goal is to not lose anybody. Play by the rules, but don't lose.
UDO is our law. That's what we do it by. Find ways to flex, but I mean, it's just like
Half of the success.
traffic speed, that traffic, you know, this highway should be at this speed. That's what I want to travel, but you can't because it's posted at this.
Right,
It's
but there is
35
some-
here,
I think
but Oak
there's-
Creek it's 45 and Caledonia is 55. That's the problem. Is we're the, you know,
Well,
We're
there's
slowing it
there's
down.
gray matter in the UDO, and I think that that's where some of the past problems have occurred too. Was like, how have we applied this to this project or that project, and trying to remain consistent.
And it's bigger than just planning too. I mean,
Right.
I think one of the things that kind of lights the fire for me to try to get this sorted out with planning is that what happens there trickles down to a lot of other departments too, and is causing a lot of headaches in other parts of, you know, business in the city, whether it's inspections or health, you know, or the clerks getting all the complaints. I mean, it trickles down everywhere from this one
Yeah.
kind of quagmire situation that we find ourselves in. So we need to, you know, not saying that this department's more important than any of the others that
But
we
it's
have,
where
but
it all
it's the one that has the most problems right now,
Interconnected.
and it's,
Well, right,
it's
and
starting
it's-
to fissure out further than it was
Right.
before.
Well, the planning department, and Marion did a really good job of explaining this to me, is really the strategic plan for the city. It is the beginning of everything. It's the roadmap, and if we don't have it fixed, we don't have a good strategic plan or roadmap, then we're in for disaster. And then we're doing these workarounds and these exceptions and working harder and longer than is really necessary to complete the projects.
It's 6 o'clock. I mean, you don't have a whole lot, but should we take a couple of minutes for the bathroom break or whatever, and then come back and I think it's excellent discussion. there's probably stuff that needs, I know it needs to go on, but I mean, hopefully the council members hear this stuff back and make sure that, you know, this has some legs and it's going, because we've been talking about this stuff, I think, and funding it and passing it on for years and years and years already, right, John? I mean, it's kind of like the same. So kind of listening to this doesn't necessarily
Surprise you.
yeah, because it's like, well, you told us you needed to replace that car 4 years ago, and you're still driving the car. So what, you know, why you're complaining about it makes sense, right? Because we're going to do this 4 years ago or whatever.
Right. Something that I wanted to throw on, actually, as a discussion somewhere where it really mattered, and I think it makes the most sense here, is I've been told that there was in the past an approved projects list. And I noticed that to some extent there's a lot of projects that come in. It feels just kind of very willy-nilly. The fiscal notes don't seem to be as complete as maybe they should be. And I guess the question is, how much are we overspending, and how do we know if we don't have a better roadmap in front of us, for example, with Common Council? You know, I think we're not doing our due diligence and providing them really the full picture of what we're looking at. You know, here's the items on this list this year that we really need to address. Here's what we have funded for it or set aside. And here's what we can do. And then all those extra asks, instead of coming through and being approved, and then we're trying to figure out where the money is, you know, we kind of have more of a grasp on a list of projects.
Strategic plan, and I think part of that was kind of recently, at least forward in kind of that 5-year planning.
Yeah.
You know, I think was a good start because kind of knew some of these big items or projects or, but I think what you're talking about internally here is operational.
Yeah.
You know, what goes on day to day from 8 to 4 or 8 to 5, and how do we continue to make that better, improve it, whatever.
Right.
Aside from, you know, maybe what the financial impact of it is outside of more efficient technology, gain efficient.
I can throw out an example. I know of one consulting firm that, on average, because I pulled up the list from BSNA, so it goes back to an inception, and then some that somebody added notes all the way back to 2008. We're spending $467,000 with them for consulting services annually, on average. And so for me,
think about that.
Yeah, for me, that's, well, why? What exactly do we need, and why is that not being addressed from a staff level? So these are the things I just kind of want to, I think, you know, if we were able to kind of tighten that up and make sure that we are looking at these things and scrutinizing them a little bit more, we might be able to find funds to cover these very necessary maintenance costs and equipment costs and a social worker, you know, and just be able to meet more of the demands of the city versus just, well, hey, you know I don't do this, so I'm gonna see if I can bring in a consultant at like $15,000 or what have you, for things that maybe we should be looking at. How can we do this in-house? What kind of tools do you need to be able to do that? You know, some of these things don't seem to be as, and I'm just speaking from what I see, obviously. I don't know what I don't know, and I don't have direct experience with it, but impact fees, setting the impact fees is an example. We're spending thousands upon thousands of dollars, and they're getting the information from us and then crunching the numbers and telling us. Oh, sorry, on that.
Let's,
I know, are we done now? We got to.
Yeah. Let's
No,
take,
we're taking a break.
Let's take a quick 5 or 10 minute break in the restroom, and then we'll come back and kind of set the stage for the rest of the meetings and kind of the agenda. Sound good? All right, let's be back at 6:15. Going from there.
This shawarma from Pita Palace.
Oh, I was wondering what that's awesome.
Right, what is it?
The shawarma, you know that. I don't know if you ever tried the thing that they slice the meat and roll over like a wrap.
Smells amazing. I've been sitting here.
I mean, the Pita Palace that was there for a short while. The one in.
Oh yeah, Pita Palace. Yes.
That they closed, but it's from the other. Their main.
Buy the parcel and not develop the business.
What's that?
I said Pita Palace. It took them so long to get up and running, and then somebody bought the building, made everybody leave, and now it's still just.
I mean, what was the reason for them to close early enough?
Because they were afraid that they were going to lose their business.
Oh. Now everyone there is in limbo, like where do they go? Because there's no other place to go.
Well, there's a shopping center up Highway 100, District 6. So.
Today.
Anonymous messages?
Are we having lunch
I
now
feel like
or
I'm
what?
Gordon Bernstein,
Live
like
nice beef.
news story.
The beef
Are you
and
deep
the
throat? Who is this?
Okay.
They will not tell me. So.
Alders,
No.
did you get?
Faith Academy's closing.
Did you guys get the Quarry agenda by mistake in your inbox?
Don't know, I didn't look yet.
So this was
Yeah.
your doings? Thank you very much. Looks delish. I might have to.
I don't know.
Sample.
No,
Yeah, it's
nothing
nice.
for
I've been
the
trying
board.
out.
Paper.
Oh, paper? Let me look. I
I
didn't
wish we
actually
didn't
look
have
at
to
what I
spend
had.
that money every year either.
Yeah.
Seeing you really aren't any violations.
It's like when I first messed with Jesse, I asked him like, what's my record retention that I have to do? Because like with school board, everything's electronic. I don't have any reams of paper that show up every.
Probably nothing because it's all on the website anyway.
Like I don't get it. Like anything that we do closed is all like there's nothing to like gather. Like it's all nope. We're not. You have nothing to read or look at. It's all just presented at that. I've been a good boy.
So what do we really have left here? Got some-
To be honest, I'm not really sure.
I don't know what this bullet numbers, I don't know. It's probably not a lot. I don't think. Kind of talked about a lot.
Not gonna lie, I didn't make the agenda. I think number 6.
30,000 foot.
Now that it's uncovered, I can smell it.
And I don't even think it's that. I think it's just more the interpretation of number 5. So we should have, I assume, been talking about the revenues, expenses, the head counts, additions, all of that as each department talks.
How you doing, man?
nothing
had a
really
better
to
days.
talk about with number 6 because all of that is included in each department. I think it's just discussing the next meetings and then,
Fell and broke both
I want to
bones in her
assume
ankle.
that
Oh,
number
She was
6
in the
talks
hospital
about
for 4 days. And
some
then
of the
she had to come
changes.
home.
I don't know if
We had to
that's
have
where you guys would
health
tell
committee
me
because she
what,
can't
or we discussed the changes.
get out of bed or
going back
anything.
to
It's just been
the
lot of
council
fun.
based on what you've
Yeah.
heard tonight.
I went through that too.
Danielle, can I ask, are we funding Kayla's?
Yes and no.
Okay. Well, I just got an email from Shelly Runty, so I wanted to give her something. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna get the cart ahead of the
Yes.
horse, but
So what we have in the 24 budget is the whole flooring was
thank you, sir.
Yeah.
300,000,
I hope you like it.
and we have 50,000 from Saputo that should be coming in.
Right.
And we're using 50,000
Right.
in donations, and then the city would
The
be
city's
funding
funding
the 200,000.
okay. That's how I was looking at it, but I wanted to make sure I was looking at it
Yeah.
correctly. So I think I'll just say that we're looking at funding some of it in the budget, maybe all of it.
Yeah,
Still
we
up
didn't want to
for,
put
but
Saputo's name out there yet.
Yeah.
Because we're not sure.
sure.
But
But I think I'll just say, subject to getting all the way through the budget negotiations, there will be movement on the project.
yeah, but we do have some moving from the.
Yeah. That's great, thank you. Thank you for figuring that out.
I'm getting closer on the park impact fees too, so.
Yeah, bring that in, I guess.
I can only imagine what that is like, because I know people have been yammering about getting that straightened so I was here for almost 4 years, so those 4 years plus the 2 years now since then, so.
Second budgetary thing in 2 days.
Look at you.
Oh boy.
Look at you.
You budgeted all pieces.
Annual budget for the school board last night was hilarious. Oh, laugh, riot, I say. All right. Debt defeasance, state aid, and all that other jokes a mile a minute.
How does the school budget look?
We have a balanced budget. I am worried about the future.
Is it up or down?
It is
There you go.
up. It is up this year, but only because we were paying off referendum debt early.
Oh.
Saves $2.8 million in interest.
What's the interest rate?
3 something.
All right, I think Courtney just, back here.
I have so many diet restrictions. Like, do I dare?
Yes. This is the reward for this.
Yeah, but then if I eat something that I'm intolerant of or allergic to,
Oh, that could.
the result is at a minimum a 6-hour stomach ache, and that's not.
I had this one. I don't know, I have this, but I have
I like how you did this.
somebody at that place on 27th Street,
Yeah, Paul told me. I apparently didn't look hard enough at last.
north of
When I was
Ramsey.
meeting with him, he said,
Oh, yeah.
"You might want to
Oh, yeah.
direct them with."
The crazy.
Or first he asked me, "So how are
It
you
used to
gonna,
be Holy
or
Land,
how are
but
they
it's
gonna
not
know where to
The
look,
one-
and I said,
This one.
uh,
I got it.
funny you
from
say
there.
that. I said they probably
Fantastic.
want
Thanks
page
for bringing
numbers.
it
And
up.
he goes,
Very good,
Try
thank you.
the-
all right.
Like, come on. Well, I have a running list of stuff to improve our lives next budget, so I will.
I've already got my binders.
Do you? Yeah. I know, right? It's like 24/7 or budget.
All right, well, let's go, we're past 6:15, let's go on and continue. I guess we move to item number 6, which is kind of an overview of what we've been talking about already. I don't know if we want to talk about other funds here, specifically, Kelly, or what you've got in mind, or set up the prefix for what's to come on Thursday. What's the pleasure of the group here?
Well, I can take this just for a second. Again, I think I said that number 6 was more of us discussing revenues, expenses, cost allocations, headcounts, and additions as each department was up here. So we discussed the planning department was receiving 1 addition, and then on Thursday we can discuss the addition to the clerk's office. Everything else was relatively flat. The cost allocations you'll see are up a little bit based on the 3% increase in salaries. The cost allocation did increase. Revenues and expenses, at least for the general fund, are balanced, but we are at max capacity, so we don't have any additional revenue where that can be added. Have maxed out our debt levy just in order to cover the expenses that we have in 24. So we are claiming all of our debt on the levy, where in past we have claimed half of it. We will see taxes. So I'm not really sure where we could, add any more revenue to budget. That being said, the additional wants from the departments are going to be really tough without expenses from anywhere else. Mine is the other department heads. You add something, you're taking away from something else. So
It sounds like we have a few areas, though, that we can look at our fee structure. It's not going to happen immediately or probably
right.
January 1, but put it in the back of the mind.
That
back here.
again, the fire department
increase
in ambulance. Look forward to.
We're already increasing on disposal fee and taxes slightly. Help cover.
If John's just unfortunately, that's still not.
Enough, I know.
Yeah, that's covering what should have been done over.
What was that number for the health insurance increase?
$750,000, and that's probably roughly what we spend on one consulting group annually and one contracted service. Just to put it in perspective.
That's the premium.
The 750?
Yeah, it's the city and the
Involved.
yeah, it's
Employee
the city and
increase
the employee
for health and
It was basically to judge on number of people having larger claims and larger things, and that's how our area got increased. So that's why we had to now come up with that more money, and that came out of left field. So nobody could have predicted that.
But
So
the claims were going to be higher. No, but there hasn't been an increase to the employee portion of health insurance years.
What does their increase look like?
16%. The cities is 31.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a wallop.
So our self-insurance fund, it has had a nice fund balance for a while, but our high claim really added 23, and the prediction is a 24 based on those users that we have in.
Yeah, there's
We
some
probably-
substantial health claims out there that unfortunately, there's no way around. And, when I had spoken with Paul, he said that this is very common to have like 5 good years and then cycle through 5 bad years when it comes to like health insurance. And it seems that we are coming up to the 1 of 5 years here where
Bad.
it's bad.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about how their industry thing, my Wayback Machine in my head is that was my prior existence before becoming a nurse. If I think about like how that industry's been impacted the last 3 years with having to offset a lot of expenses without charging any sort of premium, co-insurance, deductible, or anything to offset that. I mean, it's not unexpected, I guess, when you set
Right.
the number that it's so big given all of the factors in play. So
Well, and that's just kind of like, what do they say, 2 things that are sure in life, taxes and death. I think you could probably add increases in insurance with that. I mean, because it's just always just going up, and you can make adjustments where they can be made, but it's just not realizing enough of a saving.
And I'm thinking the dynamics are probably average workforce age is probably continuing to go up. 'Cause we're not replacing or adding as many younger in.
Yeah, I think we're like our average age is roughly about 50 or something like that. And I can tell you, I just turned 46 and I feel like, oh my gosh, now I have this ache and that ache. And, if you're probably utilizing your insurance more as you age.
Well, and I think sorry, go ahead.
I was going to switch gears a little bit and go wage costs. I think, was it the fire chief that mentioned their contract is coming up for
Yes.
renewal? I mean, since obviously wages are 70+% of our budget, I mean, where do we stand with those contracts? How do we think they're going to blow out? I mean, do we have? I mean, we're putting an estimate in, I guess, for 24, right, at this point, on what those final representative salary numbers or wage numbers are going to be?
Well, we're looking at keeping consistent with the rest of the city at a 3% increase. And that's, the first start with really no other changes to any sort of language that's going to have a negative fiscal impact on the city. So when we say that 3%, you're talking about making up that 16% increase in health. You're talking about recruitment, talking about retention. So to say that we could even entertain something less than that, we're fooling ourselves. And you get looking at other communities around us, we're all in the same boat. But we the days of crossing your arms and saying it's a 1.5% raise, that's archaic, antiquated, dangerous thinking. That you want to really screw the pooch on this, do things like that.
Well, and it's where is that money coming from?
What's that?
I said we need to really look at where is that money coming from, because we're not receiving enough revenue year over year to cover even wages. We've received additional shared revenue. Every additional penny that we received in 2024 has been eaten up by wages. Our increased wages from 2023 to 2024 is 1.4.5 million. And so if we're not receiving 1.4 million in revenues, and that's even keeping every department flat, you just can't offer 3% every year.
Right.
But now, when do we start getting
But
the
we
increase?
also cannot be
When do we
comparable
get
to
the
other.
increase in
Shared revenue in 24.
24?
Yeah.
So,
Which was an additional 850,000. That didn't even cover. We've been lucky to have interest income. We're lucky to have net new construction increase, but that was
That
only
wasn't
1.7%, so that doesn't cover wages. Like I said, every additional revenue source that we received in 24 was eaten up by wages, and that was still pulling expenses in order to keep departments flat. And as those costs increase, how do these departments maintain the level of they are on flat budgets?
Inflation is hitting those, obviously, like everybody else.
Right, and the flip side of that from a staff perspective is then how do you compete with other municipalities and especially the private sector? You can't. And we have other municipalities in this area that are paying sign-on bonuses for certain jobs. So, and getting big pay increases annually.
When are we gonna get the results of that compensation study?
They're working on the surveys now.
I think it's
Don't
going to be
have
some
any
time.
Couple months?
I would think
Yeah.
it's going to be into
It was
the first.
I think 3 months of work being done on that.
I think you're looking at first quarter, and still, how our employees are set up here is you may have that salary range of, let's say, 60,000 to 80,000, but then you're capped at like that 65 percentile. So you're really not looking to pay them that top wage. And my train of thought or thinking is like, well, it's kind of misrepresenting to the employee. It's
Right.
like, oh, well, the top end's here. I'll get there someday. Well, no, you're not, and I don't like that because then once they do find out, we lose people.
But I mean, like, why even bother to give a range if we're capping at a different number?
I agree. So
Well, we're gonna be in a catch-22 because the city has a policy or a goal to be within this range with our comparables. And we're either gonna have to find the money to stay in that range, or we're gonna have to give up where we wanna be. And when we give up where we wanna be, it's gonna be even harder to find people.
Right.
Right. Well, and that's why I'm trying to look at ways where it makes sense. You know, I don't know how much we pay for payroll, but these are things that are paper and people are printing them out and they're putting them through Excel and signing. This can be automated and it should be. There's a lot of pieces that could and should be automated. There's, again, you know, a consulting firm that's gotten almost $500,000 from us.
And that's for what?
The consulting firm, engineering.
Well,
It's with Rupert Milky.
yeah, well,
Just them, though.
we don't have staff. I don't think to eliminate that.
I think we
I don't
could.
think you can automate enough things to
No.
do that because of the nature of that kind of consulting.
Mm-hmm. Right, but I mean, I think I don't know what goes into the process of who we contract with and what requires consulting, but I think we should probably look at it just to see where we can make some changes to save some money because it's a lot. It's a lot of money on average, $467,000 a year.
Yeah.
And then you have a 8-person staff department that we're also paying. It's just it's all adds up. It's all part of the greater, you know, just like the having the pain points in our processes and the redundancy. It all adds up to a greater opportunity.
Okay,
All areas to look at,
yeah,
opportunities.
so that was all I had on number 6, to keep those.
And just what,
Points
what
in
are
the
the
back of your
what
head.
are the projections for landfill money?
2.5 million. It's about 200,000 up from last year. And that all goes into capital.
And again, with that
That's not
we don't know
forever.
how long it's going to last.
Right.
And it's at a double pace at what we were originally supposed to get. So we're double pacing this money. So at some point in half the lifespan, it's going to end.
Well, and like I said, it's all going to capital, so you just have to think capital is all going to be covered by debt at some point. I mean,
Very scary.
Interest and debt service or interest borrowing and landfill siting. I mean, that's what we have in our capital fund.
We're lucky
This
to
was
land.
this was imminent. I mean, that's basically what we had found out when we were meeting with Paul and others that we're already on this course. That this was going to happen, and next year we might be looking at layoffs, possibly. I mean, if
Well, in that landfill, Brad said, because it's ended already. Otherwise, we would probably, the first phase, we'd probably be happy about that termination.
Probably.
finalization, now it's kicked out. They're doing the same thing. Just gotta watch what. I don't see that change. But yeah, I mean, it has on the opportunity, that's commentary that you put together, Kelly. I mean, sure, a huge one. Opportunity in terms of capital. And it save a huge amount of borrowing, interest costs, and projects. But the interesting part about it, I think, is that while it's still here and the city has developable and growth available, we're going to need to expand the fire station or whatever. Some of the, if we can get to that point, use some of those funds, hopefully while they're still there, get to a more mature or built-out community, if I use that term, or whatever. I mean, maybe there's some matching in that as well. But yeah, at some point, the taxpayer pick up part of that.
Right.
If we're not protective of credit rating, we end up paying more interest.
Right.
Help the situation here.
Well, it's like, what was that TID loan that was charging interest and we had the money, but nobody transferred it over so that we weren't getting charged interest. I mean, it's just, it's shoring up some areas where we're not maybe making the most sound decisions to making sure that that's not happening.
Right. You have a lot on your plate.
This is just the budget.
I'm sorry I was not here last meeting, but on the property tax, I see, is there a slight increase in property tax?
The goal was flat. The goal was zero. Deliver a zero tax increase until we got that $750,000 tab. And that's literally all we're looking to put that on the payer. That's it. And because we came in with our 3 goals and we were meeting them until we got that bill. And then it was like, it was
Railed the train
good.
a little bit.
What about fund balance? I know I read through in your opening comments that, we're over our target, whatever, and look at that as kind of overtaxed dollars, over collected. We're taking some of that back in 24 now. I that correctly?
What do you mean?
Fund balance.
Using some of the fund balance to offset the cost that been hit with.
That cost. You can use it for capital project, which is something that we discussed, but I don't think we finalized moving some fund balance over to the capital.
Because at some point, we don't want general fund balance target range. Council that said is 30%. Right?
We're higher than that right now.
Yeah, that's my comment. So.
Yeah, we could move about $3 million to capital in order to get us down to 30%. We can go as low as 15%, which is moving $7 million.
I have a project for 1,000 I'd like to throw it in there. I don't know if it made it into the budget or not, but I knew that there's a need for a stoplight over in front of the high school, and that we could do a shared project and they would handle the maintenance thereafter.
School district would?
Really? Yep.
Well, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of concern because I've one friend alone in the city who has prevented kids getting ran over multiple times.
I live right there. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I think.
What's the maintenance cost over time compared to the?
I don't think anything has been done on it. It's been
it's
a
been
talk.
it's been initial conversations with the school district because it's a serious need, and it comes down to what's the cost of life, right? Because that's where we're headed.
They're the driver of the need, so they should,
Right.
they should pay for it.
Well,
they will.
they will. They'll pay for the
Initially.
maintenance, and they'll pay for a part of whatever we had talked about.
I thought the quote was coming in over 400,000 for the entire to do it. So we're only at
Well, and I'm not exactly sure because I don't know if I know that mayor's talked about some of the solar traffic lights.
There's solar options out there now, which are much cheaper than tunneling and burrowing and running all that, where they run on timers and sensors, but it's all, solar powered. And I know they exist. And that's what, when we had started, we met with them like a month ago. We were invited out to a lunch function, and we just all hit it off. And that was one of the things we talked about. And I think it's a thing where we can look to invest in what's really right.
Mm-hmm.
I understand there's a dividing line between us and them, but I'm trying to bring back the us and them type stuff, even though because we're all here together. But for sure, they take care of maintenance. That there's no question about that.
To that point of bringing it all together, I've got neighbors that are concerned with where the driveway is going to come out, their expansion and rec department, and they'd like to have that move farther to the east. The school board doesn't want to do that. So maybe we can negotiate some things. Well, we always look at everything as an individual thing instead of tying it in to say, well,
why not?
You're willing to do this, then we're willing to do that.
Right.
Makes sense. Not opposed to it.
You met with the school board, did they talk to you about their, Andrew Crowley, their business director? They have some very, I think, intriguing plans about a clinic and all the ancillary parts of it.
Mhm.
And I know that Mike talked to me about, hey, is that something that you think the city might be interested? That way there's more people, so that way it makes their contracts with these other providers a little bit more attractive for them to provide these discounted services to not only the school district staff, but also municipal staff. Okay, well, if that can be like a net benefit as well for the insurance side of things, where, okay, instead of paying for, you need to get an MRI. Oh, okay, well, they have this partnership with ATI Imaging or whatever the case be to, lower that cost overall, because they're self-funded as well.
Right.
So it's in their best interest to also get those services at much of a discounted cost overall.
Right. Yeah, and that was definitely something that was brought up. It was more of a just, hi, nice to meet you sort of introduction bunch, and just trying to get those conversations going and more of a partnership with the school district than what we've seen in recent times. And so that was absolutely something that they had talked about. And I'm open to all kinds of ideas and thinking outside the box and how can we solve for our problems. I'm willing to hear anything.
Well, they've got pretty much new turnover management as well, as you well know. But we just had, I thought, a great opportunity that, was it fiber optic, John, that with the school district and us? Has that all been installed and up and running, I'm assuming?
Well, yes, almost, yeah. And then we're ironing out the final pieces to a memorandum of understanding, so that way the city, can, in cases of emergencies, let's say, active shooter, stuff like that, they can tap in and have access to the cameras at the schools and be able to better respond to situations and that sort of thing. So we're in hopefully the last stage of ironing that out too. And again, shoring up that partnership with the district, the school district and the city, and trying to facilitate more of a relationship, because I think that there are benefits that they can bring to the table that we can't, or they can do it easier than we can, and vice versa.
All right, I think we're getting off the subject a little
Yep.
bit. I mean, we're not here to manage the city, but I mean, I think it's all good discussion. I mean, bringing out ideas, you know, different people's background, expertise. As you said, I think those contacts with the school district are critical as well. Schedule. Everybody's on for Thursday. John, I'll ask you to chair because I will not be here.
We may have no, we wouldn't, right? We have an issue with the quorum if Joe's not here.
Little issue up in Green Bay going on Thursday.
Better win.
Yeah. That.
Little issue, nice.
And then next week, Monday and Wednesday, I have some medical tests on Monday afternoon, so I hope that they should be done before 4, but I won't be controlling that schedule. So I'm anticipating being here at 4, but if I'm not, I may be late and you'll have to start without me.
I just have one question before we're done. As far as changes that come from the finance committee to common council, is that something that we discuss at the end? Is that something that we discuss as each meeting is going along? Because I just don't want some of the wants that were discussed tonight to fall through the cracks that don't discuss them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
I guess it's the privy of the group. I think we've probably had discussion and dialogue both ways. I think, and we can do it, you know, either way. If there's something specific that you heard that you think that, you know, you want to recommend to the council that be included in the recommended budget, and we want to make those motions tonight, we can do that. We can also go back and kind of just, you know, peruse through the entire list, and that, you know, one of our last assignments is say, if you've got specific items, you know, come with them and you know, either as pluses or minuses or adds or actions or whatever. That kind of sum it up.
I think the way it's been done in the past is that Paul used to keep track of that and then renegotiate those items that were questioned, and then the final list would remain.
Yeah.
So I made note of things tonight.
If we do it at the end, our priorities may change.
Right,
You look at
exactly.
something today and see I'd like this, but
Yeah.
And
So
I
we can
think
discuss
John,
that on Wednesday.
yeah, I think John's point's well taken too. Sometimes, you know, this process, you're going through it, you know, stuff, these numbers sometimes are still moving around and whatever.
Mhm.
You go back to the department head, okay, hey, you know, if we get this and this is, you know, this flyer, okay with it. So, I think maybe in this case, it might make sense to wait till the end and then kind of just cruise through them quickly. Know what's on the hit list, whether they're going to be recommended changes, and as a council member, have to shepherd that along or council discussion. Make sense?
As a bell.
All right, with that, I think we can take a motion to adjourn and moved.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you for your
Thursday
time.
at 4 p.m.